I want you to imagine, just for a second, the sheer bone-deep exhaustion of a long-haul flight.
Oh, yeah. Like being crammed in a middle seat for 14 hours straight.
Exactly. Just the worst. But now I want you to take that feeling of physical and mental drain and like multiply it by 1,000 to really understand the scale of what we're looking at today. Because we aren't talking about sitting on a plane. We're talking about navigating through a vast three-dimensional void in near total darkness.
Relying entirely on magnetic fields and, the haunting songs of your own species echoing through the water to guide you.
Right. And here's the truly staggering part to me. You haven't eaten a single meal the entire time.
Nothing. 0 calories coming in.
None. You are fueling this monumental, continent-spanning effort strictly by burning through your own internal fat reserves. So you can picture that, like almost unfathomable level of biological endurance. You're just starting to grasp our subject for today.
Because when you frame the migration biologically, rather than just, looking at a line drawn on a map, the sheer athletic feat becomes almost terrifying.
It really does.
We're talking about pushing vertebrate physiology and muscular endurance to their absolute breaking points. It forces us to reconsider the physical limits of mammalian life, frankly.
And that is exactly our mission for this deep dive. Today, we are unpacking a staggering new piece of research published in Royal Society Open Science and reported by Science Daily on May 19th, 2026.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this. Scientists at Griffith University have just documented the longest confirmed journey ever for an individual humpback whale.
Yeah.
We are talking about an astonishing 15,000-kilometer trek between Australia and Brazil.
Which is just, to put that number into perspective, that distance is well over a third of the Earth's entire circumference.
That's wild.
It really is. But this goes far beyond just, securing a new entry in a biological record book.
Yeah.
This discovery fundamentally reshapes our understanding of animal migration.
Right.
It completely redefines the interconnectedness of global oceans, and crucially, it raises major implications for how these marine giants might survive or fail to survive in a shifting environment.
So to understand why this matters, we first really need to look at exactly what these whales did. Because it wasn't just a single rogue animal doing this. The study focuses on 2 distinct whales.
Right, 2 completely separate documented cases.
So let's start with the first one. We'll just call it Whale 1. This individual clocked a minimum distance of 14,200 kilometers. To put that into human geographical terms, that is roughly the equivalent of swimming in a straight line from Sydney all the way to London.
Yeah, but we have to emphasize that phrase, minimum straight line distance.
Right, because they aren't swimming through an empty swimming pool.
Exactly. What's fascinating here is that the 14,200 kilometers for whale 1 and the 15,100 for the second, those are mathematical abstractions.
Right, just drawing a perfect line on a globe from point A to point B.
Yeah. But in the physical ocean, whales do not and literally cannot swim in perfect straight lines. They have to navigate around massive, shifting ocean currents. They're looping around land masses, continental shelves, all of that.
And avoiding predators, right, like pods of orcas.
Precisely. They are constantly adjusting their routes. So because scientists only have the recorded starting and ending coordinates, the actual path they swam was undoubtedly thousands of kilometers longer.
Wow.
Yeah, the exact route they took through the deep ocean remains a total mystery.
Which brings us to the timeline. Because, how did researchers even piece this together? It wasn't observed all at once. So, Whale 1 was first spotted in Hervey Bay in Queensland, Australia back in 2007. Then it pops up in that exact same Australian bay 6 years later in 2013. So, okay, that establishes a pattern. The whale has a home base. But then, and this is the crazy part, in 2019, it's suddenly photographed near São Paulo, Brazil.
It's just wild. It effectively crossed from the Pacific Ocean all the way around the bottom of the world into the Atlantic Ocean.
Moving between entirely different oceanic regimes. And if that seems wild, Whale 2 is the absolute record breaker here.
Oh, for sure.
Researchers photographed this second individual way back in 2003 at Brazil's Abrolhos Bank.
And we should actually pause on the Abrolhos Bank for a second because the ecological context there really matters.
Okay, set the scene for us.
So this isn't just a random patch of open water. The Abrolhos Bank is this massive, shallow water coral reef system off the coast of Bahia in Brazil. The water is warm, it's structurally protected from deep ocean turbulence, and biologically, it is the primary humpback nursery for the entire western South Atlantic.
This is a hot spot.
A massive hotspot. When humpback whales congregate there, they are there for a highly specific biological imperative to breed, to give birth, and to nurse their calves in a secure environment.
Right.
In fact, when this specific whale was spotted in 2003, it wasn't a lonely wanderer. It was photographed swimming in a highly active social group of 9 adult whales.
So it was just engaging in totally standard behavior for that region.
Exactly, just doing normal whale things in Brazil.
But then we fast forward, what, 2.5 decades? September 2025. This exact same whale is spotted completely alone in Hervey Bay, Australia. That is a straight line distance of 15,100 kilometers.
It's truly hard to fathom.
It is. But given the vastness of the ocean and a 22-year gap, I know you listening are probably wondering the exact same thing I was. How on earth can scientists definitively prove a whale in Brazil is the exact same whale seen in Australia decades later?
It's a fair question.
I mean, if I look at a photograph of myself from 2003, I barely look like the same person, let alone trying to identify a massive creature underwater subjected to the harsh conditions of the open ocean. Couldn't they just, look similar?
It's a complete necessary skepticism. I mean, if a research team claims an animal swam 15,000 kilometers over 2 decades, the burden of proof is incredibly high. You cannot just look at 2 photographs and say, yeah, they look similar in size and color.
Right, you need something concrete.
Exactly. You need a definitive, immutable biological identifier. And for humpback whales, that identifier is their tail, which marine biologists refer to as a fluke.
So the fluke has, unique markings that act exactly like human fingerprints.
That's exactly it. A humpback's fluke has a highly specific pigmentation pattern underneath it, can range from pure, stark white to entirely black, with all this complex modeling in between.
Okay.
But more importantly, the trailing edge of the tail gets nicked, scarred, and serrated over the course of the whale's life.
Oh, so like battle scars.
Exactly. These marks come from surviving predator attacks, from sharp barnacles attaching and detaching, and just general environmental wear and tear. And those jagged edges form a highly specific topographical map that is entirely unique to that one single whale.
Okay, I understand the theory, but again, over a 22-year gap, new scars form, right? Old scratches might fade.
They do, yeah.
Trying to match a photo from 2003 to a photo from 2025 sounds like trying to identify a specific, slightly torn leaf in a massive forest based solely on a grainy photograph you took 20 years ago.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it. It is incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
And identifying that single torn leaf is exactly why they needed a staggering amount of data to make this discovery possible.
Right, because they didn't just casually flip through a filing cabinet, right?
No, not at all. This specific study required cross-referencing an archive of 19,283 high-quality fluke photographs.
Over 19,000 distinct images. Just the data management alone must be an absolute nightmare.
It's a monumental undertaking. These images were gathered over a span of 40 years, stretching from 1984 all the way to 2025, and they cover vast stretches of coastline across Latin America and Eastern Australia.
So how do you even begin to sort through that?
Well, to process that sheer volume of visual data, scientists now employ automated image recognition software, but it's vital to understand how that software actually functions.
Because it's not just like looking at the picture as a whole like we do.
Right. The computer algorithms specifically isolate the trailing edge of the fluke. They map the exact geometry of those serrations and convert the physical shape of the tail into a complex mathematical sequence.
Okay, so it digitizes the physical topography of the tail into like a string of data points.
Precisely. And then the software cross-references that mathematical sequence against thousands of others in the database, looking for a statistical match. It has to account for different lighting conditions, different camera angles.
And water distortion, I imagine.
Oh, a ton of water distortion, yes.
So the computer does the heavy lifting of narrowing down the 19,000 photos into a short list. But I assume the scientists aren't just blindly trusting the algorithm on a record-breaking claim like this.
Absolutely not. The algorithm is just the first filter.
Right.
Once the software flags a potential match, human researchers have to step in and manually, painstakingly verify every single point of comparison.
Pulling up the 2003 photo and the 2025 photo side by side.
Exactly. They examine the anchor points of the deepest scars and the permanent pigmentation blocks to confirm the identity beyond any shadow of a doubt. The human eye is still required to account for any new scarring that might have occurred over that massive 22-year gap.
You know, what I find genuinely inspiring about this entire process is where those 19,000 photographs actually came from.
Yeah, the source of the data is amazing.
Dr. Christina Castro, she's the lead researcher from the Pacific Whale Foundation. She highlighted a really beautiful aspect of this research. She noted that every single photo contributes to our understanding of whale biology. And a massive portion of this data is driven by what we call citizen science.
Yes. The field of marine biology has been fundamentally transformed by platforms like Happy Whale.
Right.
Happy Whale is this global trapping database that allows absolutely anyone, a tourist on a commercial whale watching boat, a local fisherman, a recreational sailor, to just upload photographs they take of whale flukes while they're out on the water.
Which completely democratizes the scientific process.
It really does.
It's like piecing together a massive jigsaw puzzle, where the pieces have been scattered across the globe by thousands of different people over 40 years. You have tourists who are just, enjoying a sunny vacation day in Brazil in the early 2000s, snapping photos with their digital cameras, totally unaware that they were capturing the crucial baseline data for a groundbreaking scientific paper in 2026.
That's the magic of it. Stephanie Snack, a researcher at Griffith University who co-authored the study, summarized this dynamic perfectly. She pointed out that discoveries on this scale demand multi-decadal investment into research programs and intense international collaboration.
Because the ocean is simply too vast.
Way too vast. And the animals are too mobile for any single research team or even a single well-funded nation to monitor effectively. It requires a collective, distributed network of human observation.
Connecting photos taken decades apart by entirely different people in opposite oceans.
Exactly. It is a triumph of collective human curiosity.
Okay, so the image recognition technology in this massive global citizen science effort prove beyond a doubt that these whales are making this incredible trek. But knowing how we track them immediately raises a much more perplexing question.
Which is the why.
Right, because crossing an ocean basin burns an unimaginable amount of calories, especially since we established that they aren't eating during this migration. Evolutionarily speaking, making a 15,000-kilometer detour seems like a terrible biological gamble.
It sounds like a death sentence, honestly.
Yeah. What possible payout makes that physical risk worth it? Why abandon a reliable, geographically close nursery for an exhausting journey into the absolute unknown? Okay, here's where it gets really interesting.
To understand the biological motivation, we have to examine a concept called the Southern Ocean Exchange hypothesis.
Okay.
And to grasp that, we need to visualize the mechanics of a humpback whale's annual migration cycle. As we discussed with the Abrolhos bank, these whales breed in warm, tropical or subtropical waters. But those warm waters are essentially marine deserts when it comes to the whale's primary food source. So in order to eat, they have to travel thousands of kilometers south into the freezing, nutrient-dense waters of the Antarctic to gorge themselves.
So the Antarctic acts as a central hub where all these different regionally isolated populations eventually converge.
Exactly. Populations that normally breed in the Atlantic, the Pacific, and the Indian Oceans all share overlapping feeding grounds down near the Antarctic ice shelves.
Okay, I'm starting to see the picture.
So the hypothesis suggests that while they are down there feeding in these massive, concentrated areas, whales from completely different geographic populations casually bump into each other. They mingle.
Just hanging out at the global buffet.
Pretty much. They hear each other's acoustic signals, they physically interact, and occasionally an individual might simply fall in with a new social group. When the feeding season ends and it comes time to migrate back north to breed, instead of turning right to go back to their native Brazil,
They turn left.
they follow their new companions and turn left, ending up settling in a completely new breeding region in Australia.
So it is essentially a spontaneous social realignment based on who they happen to feed next to. But Stephanie Sack noted that this rare behavior, whether it's intentional or totally accidental, actually serves a massive evolutionary purpose for the species as a whole.
It does. It's incredibly beneficial.
Because if a whale from the Brazilian population decides to migrate with and eventually mate within the Australian population, it introduces entirely new genetic material to that group.
Which is a critical mechanism for maintaining genetic diversity. In any geographically isolated animal population, genetic diversity eventually stagnates.
Right, which is dangerous.
Highly dangerous. That stagnation makes the entire group much more susceptible to sweeping diseases or environmental stressors because they all share the same genetic vulnerabilities.
So an influx of fresh DNA from an animal born 15,000 kilometers away acts as like a biological booster shot.
That's a great way to put it. It increases the genetic variance and, consequently, the long-term resilience of the entire regional population.
But the exchange happening here isn't just genetic, is it? it is also cultural,
Yes.
because the source material explicitly points out a truly surprising detail. These migrating individuals carry new song styles from one region to another across ocean basins.
This is arguably one of the most profound implications of the research. It
Mhm.
forces us to elevate how we view marine intelligence. We tend to think of culture as a strictly human phenomenon, right?
Right, for sure.
But humpback whales have incredibly complex, highly structured vocalizations. These are not just random animal noises or basic communicative grunts. They are highly structured songs with specific themes, repeated phrases, and a distinct acoustic architecture.
And they're long, too.
Oh, a single song can last for 20 minutes, repeat continuously for hours, and travel for miles through the water column.
So when a whale from the Abrolhos Bank integrates into the Hervey Bay pod, it doesn't just quietly blend in. It brings its native acoustic structure with it.
Exactly.
It's exactly like a foreign exchange student coming back from a semester abroad and introducing a viral new pop song to their high school.
I love that analogy. That is exactly what's happening. And the receiving population listens, learns, and incorporates those new acoustic patterns into their own vocalizations.
That's just mind-blowing.
It is evidence of high-level social learning and cultural transmission happening across entirely different ocean basins. It maps a web of animal communication and cultural evolution that is vastly more sophisticated than traditional marine biology previously gave them credit for.
I absolutely love the idea of this complex acoustic map slowly shifting as one whale introduces a new phrase to a pod on the other side of the world. But that brings up a glaring logical issue for me.
Okay, what's that?
Well, if spreading fresh genes and transmitting cool new cultural knowledge is so highly advantageous for the species, why aren't they doing it constantly? Why do the vast majority of whales stick to their native roots if mixing it up is so biologically and culturally beneficial?
It comes down to survival. The caloric penalty for making a mistake in the open ocean is fatal.
Oh.
Navigating to a known, historically safe nursery is a proven survival strategy that guarantees the highest chance of calf survival. The energy expenditure required to deviate from that known path into unfamiliar waters is a massive biological risk.
I guess you don't mess with what works when the stakes are that high.
You really don't. And the data starkly illustrates just how incredibly rare this deviation actually is in practice. Remember that huge data set? Out of the 19,283 identified humpback whales in this 4-decade data set,
Yeah.
only these two specific individuals were confirmed to have made this cross-basin journey.
Wait, really? 2 out of nearly 20,000?
Yes, that represents just 0.01% of the recorded population. It is an extreme statistical anomaly.
Wow. So is this just a random one-off anomaly, like a
Mm.
couple of highly adventurous or maybe just very confused whales taking a wrong turn in the Antarctic? Or is this an early warning sign of a major permanent behavioral shift across the species?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, researchers believe we are likely looking at the leading edge of a forced behavioral shift.
Forced by what?
The consensus is that climate change could make these extremely rare crossings much more common in the near future. The physical environment that dictates their migrations is not static. It is changing rapidly.
So let's break down the actual mechanics of that.
Huh.
What is physically happening in the Antarctic water that pushes a 40-ton animal to alter a generational migration route?
It all traces back to the very foundation of their diet, Antarctic krill.
Okay, the tiny shrimp guys.
Right, they're tiny shrimp-like crustaceans, but their life cycle is intricately, inseparably tied to Antarctic sea ice. During the harsh winter months, juvenile krill survive by feeding on the dense layers of algae that grow on the underside of the sea ice.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and they also use the complex, jagged crevices of the ice canopy as vital shelter to hide from predators.
So the sea ice isn't just a frozen surface floating on the water. It is literally the nursery, the pasture, and the sanctuary for the krill.
Exactly. It is the keystone architecture of the ecosystem. But as global temperatures steadily rise, the extent and the seasonal duration of that sea ice are shrinking drastically.
Which means the krill lose their habitat.
Completely. Without the ice canopy, the krill populations cannot sustain themselves in their historical zones. So the massive krill swarms are actively migrating. They are moving further south or concentrating in entirely different geographic areas, desperately trying to find the cold water conditions and ice structures they need to survive.
And because the humpback whales are entirely dependent on those dense swarms of krill to pack on the thousands of pounds of fat reserves they need to fuel their breeding migrations, They have no choice in the matter.
None at all.
If the krill move, the whales must move.
Exactly. The distinct geographic feeding zones where these isolated whale populations used to operate are shifting, shrinking, and overlapping in unprecedented ways.
The all being pushed together.
Yes. As the physical environment and the foundational food sources shift, animal behaviors must adapt if the species is going to survive. The established map of the ocean, which these whales have known for generations, is actively being rewritten by rising temperatures.
That is so intense.
Researchers anticipate that we are going to see these once-in-a-generation 15,000-kilometer crossovers become increasingly common simply because distinct, previously isolated populations are being forced into the exact same shrinking feeding grounds in the Antarctic.
So what does this all mean? Let's zoom out and look at the whole picture we've unpacked today.
Mm-hmm.
We have two individual humpback whales that have completely shattered our understanding of biological endurance, completing confirmed journeys of over 15,000 kilometers across ocean basins.
Record-breaking odysseys.
Truly. And we know this happened only because of a monumental 40-year data mountain where advanced automated edge detection algorithms met the sheer collective power of global citizen science.
A perfect blend of technology and human effort.
We've also learned that these exceptionally rare travelers are vital agents for their species, facilitating critical genetic exchange and engaging in high-level cultural transmission of acoustic songs. They are like oceanic ambassadors.
That's a great way to view them.
And perhaps most pressingly, we understand that as the foundational sea ice of the Antarctic retreats, the oceanic map is changing. That might potentially turn these extreme behavioral anomalies into a necessary new baseline for survival.
It is a profound demonstration of how deeply interconnected our global ecosystem really is. I mean, it stretches from the microscopic algae growing on the underside of a melting piece of ice to the feeding habits of the largest creatures on Earth, all the way to a tourist holding a digital camera on a boat.
It really is.
Right.
So to you listening, the next time you feel completely daunted by a long commute or overwhelmed by a vast amount of new information you have to process at work, take a moment to consider the sheer scale and interconnectedness of our planet.
Absolutely.
Remember that something as seemingly insignificant as snapping a quick photograph of a whale's tail on a sunny vacation can actually provide the critical missing puzzle piece to solve a 22-year-old scientific mystery. The puzzle pieces of our world are everywhere, constantly waiting to be connected by human curiosity.
And, as we reflect on those connections, this leaves us with an important and somewhat complex question to consider moving forward.
What's that?
Well, if the continued retreat of sea ice forces these historically distinct, geographically separated whale populations into tighter, much more frequent contact in the Antarctic, what ultimately happens to their unique acoustic cultures?
Oh, wow.
Could we eventually see a future where the distinct regional languages and evolutionary lineages of humpback whales blur entirely, leaving us with a single, homogenized, global ocean culture?
That is a massive and deeply fascinating thought to leave on. Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive. Keep looking for those hidden connections in the data, keep asking questions, and stay curious.